Hey everyone, welcome to the very first episode of the Disney Movie Marathon. This is something that I've wanted to do for a very long time, probably since the beginning of my channel. I've always thought it would be a really fun idea to talk about every Disney movie from the beginning until now, or whenever we finish, because it's going to take a very long time. I'm recording this introduction separate from the main video because I just wanted to give a disclaimer before we begin, because so many things went wrong when we filmed this video the first time. We actually had to record it twice. We were almost done recording the first time and I realized the microphone was on mute, so literally nothing we said was captured. Sarah was such a good sport though, and we immediately started over and filmed again right away. I hope it doesn't show up in the video, but obviously I felt rather deflated through the entire second recording, so if you notice anything off, that's why. I also wanted to give you a heads up. Toward the end of the review, I've invited my friend Eli to share some of his thoughts about the movie. I was reading his blog the other day and I just loved his entry on Snow White, so I thought it would be a great idea to bring him on for a couple minutes to share some of those thoughts with us. That was filmed after Sarah and I filmed our review though, so there won't be a natural transition with our review. I just wanted to let you know it was coming. Anyway, I think that's all for now. Let's get on with the first episode of the Disney Movie Marathon and our review of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Hello everyone, welcome back to this disaster.
I feel mildly deflated at the moment.
Do you need a gummy?
Maybe I better not.
No, fine.
Maybe I'll have a gummy when we're done.
Make you happy, we have a gummy. Is it recording?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it is. I better double check. Okay.
Hello everyone, welcome back to Jonathan's Rite of Passage.
So, for this series, I want to have like a discussion about the movie. So, I'm going to have a guest in every episode. For now, my guest is going to be my cousin Sarah, because she's really interested in a lot of these first ones. There's probably going to be some other guests, but for now, Sarah is really interested in a lot of the early ones.
Sarah will have to.
Oh, actually, Sarah's like my first choice for a guest. But
Thank you. With a movie like Snow White, it's so iconic. So many people have seen it that if you only touch the surface of it, that would be really boring. So, to that end, we're going to tell you a little bit more about the history of it. When it came out, nobody had ever done anything like it. Walt was even in the paper as, like, this was his folly. People were already shooting him down about it. And he kept after it, even though he was running out of money. It was costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. In spite of that, he was a source of employment for artists during the Great Depression, and he was so committed to his vision for the movie that he even provided art training for them to help them achieve what he wanted. And he was really a team player. I gotta give him kudos for that, because I don't know how much of a team player I am. I don't know. He brought in 2 European artists. One of them was described basically as being a maverick, but he had a special point of view where he would come up with all of these creative sketches, and Walt valued him because he was an idea guy. He had really creative ideas. And there was another European artist who was already very polished as a children's book illustrator, using watercolor, absolutely gorgeous, so skilled, and he harnessed both of their talents towards his project. It was very clever on his part to get all of these people to work together and to work so hard, and he would give out a bonus to somebody if they came up with something funny that could go into the movie. $5 if it was good, $10 if it was really good, which would have been a lot more money back then if you adjust for inflation. Helped get you groceries. He also paid a lot of attention to the music, because back then he realized that that's what people would carry with them. Maybe not a lot more than today, but perhaps a lot more than today. They talked about how you can't go out and buy the film. Mm-hmm. They could go out and get sheet music.
Or a record.
So he put a lot of thought, a lot of dedication, a lot of perfectionism into the film.
That perfectionism is what made the film what it is. It's what made his company what it is. Without that perfectionism, I don't think the film would have worked.
Probably not.
Because
And probably he would have just needed to have given up on it if he just listened to all the naysayers.
the fact that he stuck with it through all the people telling him that it was a foolish idea.
Potential company failure.
Yeah, and it really could have been. If it had failed as these trade papers had said it would, his company would have gone under because he'd put so much money into this that they basically were betting everything on this film. And the fact that he kept going, the fact that he persevered through all the people telling him he shouldn't, the fact that he risked everything and it turned out amazing, I think is really inspiring.
At that point, cartoons were for laughs.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to take it deeper than that and really tell a story. Cartoons were not for making people cry, and he wanted to see if he could get people to cry. Something that I never thought about growing up watching it was that at the time, people didn't necessarily know how the story was going to end. So when you get to that absolutely beautiful scene where she's dead, or just during that whole time when she's dead, they didn't know what was going to happen. And he did get them to cry, and that was really special. The girl who played Snow White, it was a bit of a, not really a fluke, but Walt, I think at the time, was looking for someone to play her, and I believe was on the phone with her father, and she just sort of butted in like, I can sing! And ended up getting the part. And she just cherished that for the rest of her life. I don't know if she's still living or not. Probably not. But even as an elderly person, she was still singing the part of Snow White. Could mention also the lady who played the Evil Queen did both the Evil Queen as the Beautiful Queen and as the Hag. She had versatility in her voice. She did a really good job. And she herself was maybe in her 60s when she did that role. So she had skill as a voice actress.
But I thought it was interesting that she was born in the latter half of the 1800s. This is early 1900s, so that's surprising.
It's always interesting to think about, though. It was also interesting to note that the one artist who was 48 was considered an old man compared to all of the people working there in their 20s, including Walt Disney, which shows you just how young he was to be tackling this project.
Mm-hmm.
So, young people take heart, go conquer the world. There's a particular song in there, it's probably titled With a Smile and a Song. It sounds so Great Depression. Just the optimism in it, like, it's okay, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Yes, I nearly got murdered by the huntsman, but it's okay. I'm gonna make friends with all of these chipmunks now. Anyway, that's something I think to take note of while you're watching it. The things that are quintessentially 30s as well, like the prince's voice is so 1930s crooner. And even the fact that she has a little squeaky voice, I think fits in with the cute female voice of the era.
One of the things that I liked about coming back to this as an adult was paying more attention to the details, the art, the backgrounds, the animation. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this series, is because I wanted to take the time to actually look at these things instead of viewing it like I would have as a kid as a fun movie to watch. I wanted to look at it for the artistic value. Looking at it in that way, I think it elevates it beyond just a movie that you watch. It really helps you appreciate the artistry.
Hey everybody, this is Eli Sansa. I'm at eJunkie2014 on Twitter, and I am privileged to be able to be on Jonathan's show to tell you about Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's just a really important important film. It was the first animated feature film made in America, and it had a miraculous production cycle. Everything Disney learned about the use of music in the Silly Symphony's slapstick comedy in the Mickey Mouse cartoons, not to mention the drama and the storytelling techniques and the staging and the camera techniques in their cartoons all led to this moment, and it exceeded everything that came before it. And it still holds up, and the characters are still some of the best that the studio ever created, especially Dopey and Grumpy. Those ones were really well-rounded. They weren't just comedy relief. They were real. They felt like they had a soul, which was one of the amazing things about the movie. It's very difficult to review this movie because, to me, it's more than a movie. It's the movie that set the standard for animation and fantasy in general. And it's a very simple story, which works in the movie's favor because it gives the filmmakers time to focus on establishing the characters' personalities. All the best movies are not necessarily plot-driven. They are about characters. And Snow White, the dwarves, and the Queen are all very easily defined, but they still feel real. If you think about it, the yodeling song was not plot-driven, but it was still an important scene because it established the bond between Snow White and the dwarves. Musicals are powerful because they oftentimes do a better job conveying importance to a plot point, like Someday My Prince Will Come. And the whole film is like this. It's very clever and tightly paced and funny and emotional. To be honest, a lot of animated films have surpassed Snow White in terms of characters and writing. I feel like Pinocchio and Cinderella hold up a little better. Certainly Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King are way more emotional, but Snow White is really in a class of its own. There's something about it that's just untouchable. It's a one-of-a-kind film. Walt Disney really is a genius. He helmed this thing to perfection. He made a true classic, and I never get tired of watching it. It's one of my favorites, and I'm really happy to talk about it. Thank you, Jonathan.
Well, I think that's going to be all for this episode. Next time we get together, we're going to be talking about Pinocchio, which is another movie I have not seen since I was a kid. I'm going to be very interested in revisiting it, especially because I'm remembering some of the things that happened in that movie, and I feel like it's going to be strange watching them now, thinking about how this definitely would not be happening if they were making this movie this day and age.
I do not know how long it's been since I watched the whole movie. So yeah, it's probably going to be very fresh and potentially disturbing.
Well, that's a good tagline. Fresh and potentially disturbing.
It sells.
Anyways, I don't know when it's coming, but you can look forward to that. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.